learn the key skills to actually resolve conflicts in a healthy way, to actually resolve it, not just to meet halfway and do that compromising thing that like the majority of people believe is like the key to a healthy relationship. We don't believe that. We're not big fans of compromising because we know that, when you strike up a new agreement with your partner, you go away meeting halfway, but still thinking you're right? You're just giving in, and each time
I'm doing them a favor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you're still not happy with that solution. So like really how to actually address conflicts. And this is one of the reasons why it's become kind of normal to have this like love-hate relationship with your partner.
Welcome back. We are on today with my guests Natasha and Jachym on the 12 Edition podcast. I'm your host, Angie Sorensen. You can come and find me at angies.com. That's angie-s.com, or on my Linktree link, which is linktree/12Edition. Both links are in the show notes. Just like every week. Listen, that's the place you can go if you want to be part of my community, if you want me to show you how to create your own podcast and get involved with what I do. I'd love to see you there. So if you like the show, please give it a 5-star rating and review, and be sure to tell your friends. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you are listening to right now. The more you do that, the more it helps new listeners discover this show. In today's episode with Natasha and Jachym, we go over what it takes to build a strong relationship. They are very honest about their not so glamorous days and patterns, which they have thankfully overcome and can now share with us from an honest point of view that is really engaging, inspiring, and shows that it is possible to grow and stay together. So, without further ado, let's begin. Hi, Jachym and Natasha. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast because, I saw your interview that you did on, I don't know if it was like a morning show or something, and I really liked how you answered, their questions, I don't know what you call them. They're not news anchors, but the presenters. I said the two presenters, and I like how you both were quite calm regardless what questions they were sending your way. And so I'd love to talk to you about, your experience of different types of relationships, the good, the bad, and the ugly from your point of view, because we're going to discover now we're going to talk in this interview, and, you've got tons of experiences, and I really love to hear more about what you have to say, what the theory of things, things sound good in theory, but the reality of it can be very different. So before we dive in, please introduce yourself, where you live, and what you do.
So I'm Natasha Koo. I'm the wife, I guess, of this pair. We are currently in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, though none of us are from this country. I'm actually a Hong Kong-born Canadian, and Jachym is Swiss.
Swiss and half Czech.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Nice mix. Mm-hmm.
And we both work together. We're clearly married, but we also, have a business together. So I guess our lives are quite intertwined. We are relationship coaches, mainly working with women with pretty much marital trouble. And they feel like they're the ones who are just trying to make a change in the relationship. So maybe the partner has given up or doesn't see why there should be any change at all, So that's kind of like the women we help.
Actually, why do you think it's the women who are seeking your help more than the men? Why is the man going, everything's good, not budging? Because men do file for divorce. Probably, isn't that almost half of them, or half of divorce are filed by men, or most of them are men filing for divorce?
I'm actually not familiar with the statistics, but it's usually there's one partner who wants to have some change and one partner who is resistant. And it just happens that we are working with women. Often women are a bit more relationship focused. And so they are the ones who tend to be more open to that. It's not just in relationships, but also when you look at self-improvement seminars or spirituality, it tends to be dominated by women.
Yeah. So with before we go into your story, can you just define for us so that we're all on the same page, what's the difference between open relationship, semi-open, polyamory, and I guess close is monogamy, right? When you say close relationship, it's okay. So can you give us the difference between the three, like open, semi-open, and poly?
Right. So an open relationship is basically where both partners can go out, can have fun with other people, but it's light, as in you're not going to enter into another relationship with anyone else. There's usually, like, you can have fun, you can have sex or whatever, but you're not going to be fostering another long-term relationship. That's what we define as open relationship. A semi-open relationship is where only one partner is going out and having fun while the other partner isn't. And polyamory is when one or both partners are having side relationships. I don't know if that's the right term, side relationships. Basically, you have multiple relationships that are romantic, and that is what we call polyamory.
Yeah, so actually, like, the big difference, by the sounds of it, between open and poly, if I was to take the two, is that polyamory, there was also the word amory, which is amour, which is love in French. So it's like you are actually allowed to fall in love with someone else. That's kind of part of the deal. Whereas in an open relationship, the emotions stay with the main partner.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For me, I feel a little bit like that's almost like a dangerous zone, a little bit between the open and poly. You cannot really control your feelings on another human being. How do you know if, your partner goes and have, dates or go to the movie with someone else? They may start getting an infatuation with the other person. How do you make sure it stays open and doesn't go into polyamory?
Right. I mean, that's one of the difficulties. And there's different ways you can handle it. One of them is that you only are allowed to have one-night stands, and you're trying to mitigate the risks through that, or that you're only going to see them a few times and then you cut it off. So there's different ways that people try to do it, but that's exactly one of the issues, that you're trying to separate feelings from sex, and it just doesn't really work. We're holistic beings. So it is very normal that those things come together. And that's one of the difficulties of the whole open relationship.
When you say this is not an easy thing to do for a holistic being, can you clarify a bit what you mean by that?
Yeah, so as we use our mind, we are dissecting reality into various components and parts, and we looked at them in separate ways. So, for example, this is me, this is a table, this is a computer, this is a house, whatever. And we look at them in separate components. And we do the same thing when it comes to human beings. So, so this is the mind, this is what I call mind, the mental activity. This is the body. And those are emotions, those sensations and feelings that are happening. Those are emotions. And then there's a physical act, which is sex. And so that separation that we're doing with the mind is a useful tool to have. But reality is not really separable. And it's the same thing with a human being. Yeah. Your mind, your body, your feelings, they all work together. It's a complex system. It's a complex system. It interacts with each other. And to think that you can just cut it away doesn't quite work. Usually there's some trade-off when you try to cut things away.
Yeah, and I think even it's not, because often we associate that with women, that, we say that women cannot have sex without attachment. And obviously some women can more easily, they can separate the two. But I think it's also something men can have. Some men actually are not interested in having sex unless they're having feelings for someone, or they can't, or it means something to them. It's not as clear cut as to say one gender can have, the whole gender can just have like one night stand and they'll be fine. At some point a line is crossing. At some point something else happens. You meet someone that touches you not physically, emotionally, they touch your heart a bit differently, or they hit you differently, it's a different feeling with them. And I like that you mentioned that holistic thing, because I've seen it happen to a married couple where they went open and they ended up, both of them, going into divorcing. And moving in with the other people they met.
Yeah, exactly. It's not so straightforward.
It's not so straightforward.
The mind makes it up straightforward. Just like, yeah, just go have fun, whatever. But
yeah, it'll be fun. But I think also something that they said, well, that she said, I didn't speak with him, but that she said that they were not in a good place when they did it. They did it to try and fix it. And I think that's probably where maybe one of the issues, I think, that was, I mean, issue. I don't know if it was an issue. They both, I think they're both happy now with their other partners. But I think if you do it to fix it, then that's where maybe you enter the zone of it's not giving you what you were expecting it to do. It's not going to fix a relationship.
Yeah, and that's actually another danger, not just entering it, but when you're in it, you have to be very mindful that you're not just pursuing other people to escape some of the trouble that may show up in your relationship. So you may start out going into an open relationship without having to fix anything. I mean, we didn't start necessarily from a place of having to fix something, but when you are in it, it does lend itself to denial and to just chasing the pleasure rather than deepening the relationship that you're having with that one person.
Yeah, because it's easy to be excited about with someone new, right? I mean, it's different from, if you're with someone for 7 years, it's harder for that partner to surprise you every day, right? It's not like, the excitement of that new text or the adventure of, discovering that new person. It's really easy for someone new to come in, and I say easy, if you give that space and you let that person in, that other person can look so much better than your current partner because it's so new and fresh, and your mind isn't really, your reason kind of goes out the window when you start to fall for someone, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is what we call the pleasure trap. The pleasure trap is exactly this, that you keep looking for pleasure and looking for a pleasure kick. It doesn't just happen in romantic relationships. It can happen through shopping. It can happen through travel. It's just the constant need for stimulation and newness. And what that does is it prevents you from finding deeper connections and deeper joys in life that are not as high as the pleasure. The pleasure is something that spikes, but it also is something that goes away relatively quickly. While the deeper joys in life, they are steady and they are soul nourishing. And that is what we have found, is that once we stop doing the open relationship, the depth that has come up in our relationship, for me, it's so much more rewarding than this pleasure cycle.
Can you tell a bit more about that side of things, the steady part of, like the opposite of the pleasure trap, like that steady part? Because one of the things, I guess, like that there's some people discover over time is that actually you have to lean into the mundane a little bit, That's actually where sometimes, the true happiness is that those little things, those steady things, the consistencies, and not just those big high roller coaster feelings, like that pleasure trap going, whether it's like, find a new lover every week, or eating a big tub of ice cream every night, or watching Netflix for 10 hours a day, or, whatever it is, like that's actually quite dissatisfying, because it doesn't add anything to your life. Whereas actually the steady 3 meals a day, so can you explain how did you find that out in your relationship? Because obviously maybe we need to backtrack a little bit. Maybe we've gone in too far, I don't know, but that's the bit I'd really like to hear about. How do you not feel bored or suffocated? How do you get that happiness? What does it mean being happy together?
Yeah. It's a really, really great question, because let's just take the example of the people who come to us, because they come to us, the woman, because they're unhappy, right? So there are clearly things happening within the relationship that just doesn't feel good, or it doesn't feel right. And she doesn't kind of want to keep doing that anymore, right? So what are her options? Now, when people come to us in this state or in this kind of situation, usually they just say, hey, we keep fighting about this, or here's our sticky spot, or this is where I lose control of my temper, and, we hurt one another. Like, this is the situation. This is the scenario that repeats itself. How can I fix it? Right? So it's almost like, here's this thorn. Now, if we were just to take it away, everything would be fine. And that's very much the same scenario if you go the other way, which is of the whole pleasure thing. It's like, actually, there's not enough intimacy. So if we just had more connection within the bedroom, it'd be all okay. You know, it's like a pinpoint. If this one thing changed, everything would be all right again. And Jachym and I, we come from the understanding of relationships that, yes, you can fix that one argument that keeps happening again and again. And yes, you can fix that intimacy issue. But that's just like one sliver of who you are as a person, as a couple, and your whole relationship. And so when it comes to what more is there and going beyond just the temporary pleasures of it, we have to keep educating people that if you want to have an extremely fulfilling, happy, exceptional relationship, you have to shift away from that equation, that transactional relationship that we're so used to having. So that means I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Now we're even. I get what I want out of you. You get what you want out of me, and we're happy for the next day or two.
And it's a horrible feeling to be in one of those. Like being on the receiving end of someone calculating is not nice at all. It's awful. Yeah.
And that math doesn't quite work out, because when is it enough? And every time you don't feel full inside of you, you're busy looking at your partner trying to get that out of them. You know, and sometimes you even blame the other person, saying, "Oh, you should have seen that coming. Like, you should have seen that I was already, like, you know, upset," or like they should foresee your discomfort or your dissatisfaction and please you before you're unhappy, right? Like sometimes we give our partner that responsibility.
It's like having a carer. It's like being a carer for someone, you know. Like it's not okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this kind of relationship, though, I mean, the majority of relationships do kind of end up in this dynamic because, okay, just look at dating apps and whatever, like people's profiles. It's all like, I'm into this, I'm like this kind of girl, I want this. Okay, I know what you want, what you need, what you want to get out of me, but like, are you going to contribute anything? Like, are you going to give anything into this relationship? Or are you just like demand, right? And as long as you jump through these hoops, I'm fine. And so for us, it's like, wow, this is a fundamental shift that you gotta get away from, because that's where you really move away from that. Okay, take that little thorn away, or okay, inject more pleasure now. You know, like it's a small fraction of what's possible. And so it's more like we need to elevate the whole basis or the foundations of how you interact, and how, like you say, the mundane stuff, the day-to-day stuff is not just mundane, because it's every second. It's where you start, right? Yeah. So if you elevate that to begin with, and you have that basis for connection and love, and it's so much more enjoyable and peaceful to begin with, then you're not trying to kind of like bob up and down on the waves, trying to get the high and then get out of the lows.
So how, because we're so used to, you know, like the movies, you know, and the media and the social media about all these ideals and what it looks like. And most of it is, a lot of it is pretty disgusting and codependent and toxic anyway. But they don't show actually we have very few representation of what it looks like to actually not being in a transactional relationship that's actually comfortable with the everyday things. I know I said mundane, and I guess that's more of like a negative connotation, but it's almost like, you know, like the 3 meals a day. So, you know, so I love what you were saying, and I'm sort of curious to know, like, what does it look like? How would you describe it for the listeners? What it looks like on the other side when you're not in a transactional relationship, which is like, oh my God, you should have seen this coming, I would have got mad, or you know, what can you get me, you know, jump to all these loops and all this kind of stuff that people do, or people counting all the good stuff they did for you, and you're like, wow, my God, you know, it's like all this crazy stuff. Like, what is it? How would you describe it? How does it look like on the other side of that when you're not putting up with that stuff anymore, and how does it look like?
All right. So the shift that needs to happen for it to be possible is to start being of service to your partner. Rather than thinking about what's in it for me, it's about what can I do for my partner. So for me, that means I'm interested in what is it that Natasha needs, what is it that Natasha wants, and what are her dreams. What is it something that I can do for her? And it's this attitude of service that actually is, in a way, is more pleasurable. It's more satisfying. Maybe not more pleasurable. It's definitely more satisfying than trying to get something from her, because you stop being so contracted in yourself. The trying to get is coming from this contraction of me, mine. What can I get?
Yeah.
And the other is like, no, actually, you opening this up and being in a less contracted state just in your body already feels better. And so it is that orientation when you start to become of service to each other, it then actually acknowledges what you are, which is this new organism, you can almost say, where that has two parts, but you're bringing both something into it and it thrives. You're sharing this new being together, and that being is greater than each one of us. It's not 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 100. It's what we call a synergetic couple, because you're uplifting each other, you're empowering each other, and you are taking life on together and creating a life and a lifestyle that you both love and in which you both thrive. So that is how it looks like.
But it's funny because, you said the 1 + 1 is not 2, is 100. Someone I know once told me, this was a guy, well, he's still a guy. He said that, so you have to imagine, like, I'm showing you my fingers, okay? So he says 1 + 1 is it, so hang on, wait. I don't know how he did it. He did it better than this, but he said, if you were to show your fingers, so 1 + 1 = and you see 11. It was kind of like he was making a point is that, when you two, there's more than just the two, like what you just said, you're more than the sums of your part. And but what you said about investing and being in service, I made this note because there's something to be said in the more you invest in something or someone, wherever you put your energy, you're investing it. And I'm not just talking financial, I'm just talking like your energy, your attention, things that you do for someone, the more you actually love that person or that thing or that, whatever it is, like the more you invested in. Also, obviously, given that there's obviously, I guess there's like a little underwritten rule is that if you keep let's say if you were keeping serving Natasha, or Natasha was always like, making sure that you were okay and, looking at, your dreams, your desires and your needs. But if nothing was coming in return, she'd be drained, right? So even then there has to be a balance. But I think, is that the difference between the transactional and what you just said, is the fact that when you're in this place of where you are of service, you are not counting because there is a trust already built. You've built something between the two of you. There has been experience between the two of you and discussion between the two of you that the other person has good intentions for you and that person is a good person. Like, you have to have a qualifying period, right? You can't just be giving, your life away to a stranger.
Yeah, I think I know what you're pointing at here. Just yesterday, was it? We were recording our own episodes for our own podcast. And the topic that we covered it's like a keyword that women are searching for. Like, how do I get more appreciation from my partner? So she clearly feels like she's doing a great deal, right? That this whole conversation about being of service, like she feels like, hey, I'm servicing him all day, all night. Like, what more do I need to do? And he doesn't seem to acknowledge it, and he doesn't seem to appreciate what I do, right? So what we shared there is that, wait a second, there are different places you can come from when we're talking about like coming from a place of service. So what Jachym is talking about is like the genuine desire to actually give and to love. I think, we all want to love, don't we?
Yeah.
Now, but for the women who are clearly searching, hey, how do I get more appreciation from my husband for what I do? Like, how do I get him to acknowledge me and see me? and value.
That's almost like from a different angle, isn't it? That's like what you can get from it versus what can you do for that person.
Yeah, but
she's looking for validation, approval, or reason to be in that relationship, right?
Absolutely. And she, at the same time, however, there's still that belief that she is of being of service, right? So this woman is just trying hard. She's doing everything she can, and maybe she's even doing more than before because he doesn't see it. And so it actually gets you quite stuck in this cycle where you take action or you try to please or care or take care of other people, and whatever it is that you do, that action taking is coming from that place of like, I want to get appreciation. I want to get him to acknowledge me. I want him to see my value. And then she does it, right? Whatever act of service. And then he doesn't like care. Like you do something and he barely notices, right?
Yeah.
And then from there you like just kind of spiral into like disappointment and then defeat, and kind of going like, okay, I just spent all this effort, all this time doing that. Nobody cares. Like, what's the point? You either blame yourself for like, like, why do I do this to myself? Or you blame your partner. Like, he should have seen it. He should have known. Like, he should have appreciated it, And
it builds resentment as well.
So either you blame him or you blame yourself. And so from there, a lot of people, like you said, either build resentment and kind of like hold this grudge. So now, in terms of the equation, that transactional relationship, now, he's further in the negative, right?
He's in debt.
Poor guy. Yeah, he's in debt. He's absolutely in debt again. And or she says, well, maybe what I did wasn't good enough. Maybe if it was more, maybe if I did it better, maybe he would then notice me and acknowledge me and appreciate.
Yeah, but you see, I would say maybe she has an issue with boundaries and self-esteem. Or am I being too harsh?
No, but because that feeling is coming from a place of lack. She's giving because she's looking for that. I think you said it already before, like that validation, that attention. So so I think where you come from when you give, that's important, because a lot of women find themselves in this cycle and they're doing everything and they're doing more and it just doesn't make them happy, right?
Yeah, and also when I say that, I know like I sound mean, but I say it because I recognize it. Like I understand that feeling of, must be the perfect little girlfriend. And guess what? It's a nightmare. You can't, because no one is. And it comes from the wrong, like you said, it comes from the wrong place, because if you're trying to be perfect for someone, it means that you're looking for an approval somewhere, even if you're not aware of it. And it's just, that's where, nothing good really can come of it until you actually change that. And it's so much more easy as well when you actually realize that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, it's like if you can, it's so important to accept ourselves and to go, yeah, I'm gonna mess up. I'm not, and I don't blow dry my hair every day. I don't want to be cooking all the time every day. And sometimes I'm gonna snap, or sometimes I'm not gonna understand what they want. But it's like accepting that we're not. We're not Stepford wives out here. We're not trying to be Stepford wives. It's a new world, But I guess it's like once you can accept your imperfection, you accept the other person's imperfection. And I think you relax more. And when you're more relaxed, you can come from a place of maybe of being more of service in a way, like what you was talking about, of being, I don't know if I'm going about this the right way.
You are onto something here that's really important and crucial. We're talking about service, and service is misunderstood. Service is not sacrificing yourself till you're on the floor and you're incapable of doing anything. Service starts with yourself. How are you giving yourself into the relationship? Are you coming from a place of lack, or are you coming from a place of fullness? Are you coming from a place of self-acceptance and taking care of yourself and making sure you're nurtured and nourished yourself? Or are you losing yourself in the relationship and you're completely depleted? When you're completely depleted, what are you giving? There's nothing to give.
No.
You're already depleted. So it has to be seen in that context, that when we're talking about service and giving, we're talking from a place of abundance. And many people who are like, well, I'm already doing everything and, it's just not working, and he doesn't like what I'm doing or is not appreciating it. All of that is what Natasha was trying to point to, is coming from a place of lack. And that pattern of service has almost been perverted. It's not useful. It's at the expense of your own life energy, and that's not what we're talking about. Then it's not synergy anymore. Then it's like someone leeching off you.
Yeah, and because you let them, right? I mean, yeah, exactly. I know that if I've been drained, it's because I've let the other person drain me. Like, that's on me, you know? Yeah. Like, it's on them too. Like, you know, it takes two to tango, but effectively, no one can make you feel any kind of way unless you let them, right? Like, you know, it's like over a longer period of time. I mean, the first time can be a surprise, but I think it's definitely about, you know, like you were both saying, about accountability, responsibility, about we have to be responsible for our own well-being, right? I don't know if you could clarify something, because you know how at the start you were talking about transactional relationship, you know, how making the other person jump through loops and what can they do for you and all of that stuff, very transactional, and then they give something back in return. But what's the difference, if you wanted to clarify this, like difference between that and being of service? Because the first one, the transactional one, I know we mentioned about, you know, that's almost like being a carer for someone, you know, the one partner has to almost like foresee the other person's emotions all the time, why they'd get upset if they didn't do XYZ correctly. So what would be the difference between that and actually where you are now, which is like, you know, being of service? And I only heard from you, Hakim, you being of service to Natasha. I don't know if it works the other way around, like, you know, as well, like, you know, a woman to man in what you teach in your coaching. But what does it look like being of service versus transaction?
I think in the past, it is really strange to put it into words. It almost doesn't make sense, but it happens all the time. It's like you want love, you want him to treat you well, you want that respect, and you want to feel special. But then sometimes when he does do that for you, it's scary to let that in.
Oh my God, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy. For us, I mean, at some point, our relationship was just really, really awful. There was a lot of passive aggression, criticism, nagging, bickering, and just bringing each other down in the smallest ways possible, like just side jabs and all that kind of stuff. And it was actually very toxic, because like those little interactions, they build up and they hurt. And so at some point we were like deep in that, and I became that very controlling person within the relationship, or at least for me, it was like within the household, because that's kind of where I like reigned.
Yes.
so that's where I was really picking on Jachym all the time. And when it came time to learn to let go of this controlling behavior, and we were already healing a great deal, like, you know, we broke each other's trust. There was a lot going on, but at that point where we were trying to heal, and I was trying to let him in more, I noticed that I was so used to that controlling energy, telling him what to do, telling him what's the right way to do things. That energy, that righteous energy of like, okay, that's wrong. That like, why are you doing that? This is the way, like, just get on with the program. I was so used to that when it was time for him to give to me, and that pure act of service, I couldn't do it. Like, so he'd be making pancakes or something like that, really nice. But then I'd be like this annoying fly over his shoulder, like telling him, oh, the batter's a bit thick. Don't you think you want to add a bit of milk in there? Like, oh, it's getting a bit hot. I don't know. Is that a bit too much oil? Oh, yes. So like, well, what toppings are we going to use? Should I go get the berries from the fridge? So before you know it, like
you thought you were being helpful, right?
Yeah, I was.
Right?
I couldn't help it. And so this poor guy trying to make a nice breakfast for his wife, like let me make you a nice breakfast. But throughout that whole process, I don't know how many times I told him how to do it. And in the end, I was like telling him how to do it. but here's a grown man, you know? And I mean, Yakin can share his point of view on this whole thing and how just friggin' disempowering it is for a man to be told how to be, you know, a functioning adult human being, right?
But it goes both ways, because it's annoying as well too, the other way around, when they try to father us. So like, you know, what you're talking about, it's almost like, you know, mothering your man, right? It's like you become the mother, he becomes the child when you're telling him how to do pancakes for the first time, right? Right? Yeah. But the other way happens too, you know, men telling you what to do, telling you what job you should quit, what you should do, you know, that kind of stuff is also very toxic. But it's interesting because I saw your article about that. It made me laugh because I was like, well, I don't see what's wrong with that. It's like, because it said you were telling him, you know, or you're giving an example. I don't know if I was based on your relationship, but you said, you know, how to wring a cloth, how to, you know, like he missed a corner when he was vacuuming. And I'm like, yeah, you lived there. You want it to be clean. I was just like, so I understand the impulse, but I also understand that it's the same, like when you go home. I don't know if you have this experience or if your parents, you know, I don't know what your situation is and your family, but like, say if I go home, I'm more than happy to help around the house. I'll be hoovering, I'll be clean, I'll be doing all kinds of stuff because I want to. I actually want to. I want to be, like you said, be of service because it's my idea. I'm volunteering it, right? But the minute my mom says, oh, can you know, are you going to hoover? And instantly I'm like, oh, for goodness sake. Like I wanted to, but now it's like as if you're telling me to do it. It's not the same. Like I'll still do it, but it's not the same kind of feeling behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, I do have to share that we've learned a great deal and we've moved on from that dynamic, that pancake dynamic.
Yeah.
I can actually let him in. And I'll give you an example because it's still a surprise of how pleasant it can be. Like this poor guy, speaking of like acts of service, right?
Yeah.
This happened twice. I'm not even kidding. It happened twice. It'll make sense in the end why I'm laughing. But yeah, he was like, you know, it was in the morning and we woke up and he's just grabbing the sheet and he's putting it in the laundry. I'm like, oh, that's really nice of him. You know, he's going to do laundry for us. All right. So I don't really bother. Like, I don't tell him how much detergent to put in. I just let him do what he wants to do. Right. So like, how nice. So he does it. And then a few hours later, you know, when it's all done, he just like pulls out this cushion.
Oh no.
A whole cushion out of the washing machine.
Oh.
He comes to me with that guilty look, you know, like, oh, he comes to me. It's mine. It's not even his. He's like, I accidentally like just stuffed this into like, sorry, you know, he was a bit like, you know, sheepish about it. And then I was like, I just looked at him like holding that soggy pillow, which had no business of getting washed with like sheets. And I just looked at him. It looked so, for me, it was ridiculous. And I just laughed.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my goodness, don't worry about it. Let's just put it on our balcony and like the sun is out. It'll dry by this afternoon. So like we had a laugh about it. And then he came back to me. He said, you know what? I was actually nervous. I thought you were going to like throw a fit like the way you used to. And just, you know, like I knew it was a mistake, but like I thought you were going to like tell me that it was a mistake and tell me that I was wrong, you know? And he was like, but then you laughed. Like you actually smiled, you laughed, and it was funny. And he's like, it's so nice. He's like, thank you. Like, thank you for being able to not like put up with this, but like be able to actually see that there's nothing personal.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
That it's actually okay. And, you know, that controlling behavior, that like just getting angry over stuff like this, like it's gone. And let me tell you, then it happened again. Poor guy, like a week later, like just like another cushion stuffed in the washing machine.
He just gets overzealous when he's doing the washing. He's like, let's just wash everything, just put it all in.
Yeah, be careful, don't put the baby in.
Yeah, no, don't put the baby in. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's interesting because I like that you brought up that example, because I guess those are things that you learn in time, right? It's like picking your battles almost ahead of time. So for example, the pancakes, right? If we were to go back to the pancakes, you know, I'm just like picturing you hovering over him and he's just trying his best and he just wanted to make you happy. And there you are, you know, basically probably like almost taking the utensils from him and doing it yourself in the end. And the thing is like in that moment where you go, yeah, actually, I would love to have some nice pancakes. And I know that if I told him to add more milk, it would be nicer for both of us. But the thing is like to almost think like fast forwarding and go, okay, what's the worst that can happen? It's like, well, maybe my pancakes are going to be a bit dry. And the thing is, he's going to notice. I don't even need to tell him. He's going to know. And next time he may even ask me, actually, do you think this is enough milk? You know, it's almost like sometimes do you think it's a case of just learning to just, let me just be quiet for a minute and just, if this isn't, there's a difference between a pancake and laundry to him crossing the road just in front of a lorry, then he would want you to say stop, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing is we really need to shift kind of the idea of, I'm allowing him or picking your battles or something like that. Look, you want to shift the perspective towards seeing your partner as a capable, powerful human being. And if you have a capable, powerful human being in front of you, you're not going to belittle them. You're not going to be like, well, you know, should I let him do this or should I let her do this or all of that? No, you're partners. You're partners and you both have your strengths and your weaknesses. And that shift, that perceptual shift really needs to happen because I know that for Natasha, she saw me as a useless man, especially around the household. Yeah. And guess what? I became completely useless. Like in the end, I was like going to ask her how to wash the fucking carrot because I was afraid that's going to be wrong again, you know, and then I'm going to be blamed for it. And then she's going to be unhappy about it. And it's like, look, that's not going to lead anywhere because the underlying dynamic is not right.
Yeah, it's quite unhealthy, isn't it? You're walking on eggshells. And then she's frustrated as well. Like both of you are not in a good place.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so there is something that you can tap into once you start to see your partner as an independent human being that's capable and that can do what they do, that does their mistakes, is flawed, all of that, that's true as well. But when you see them as someone who's capable, then a different dynamic starts to emerge.
But how do you do that if you see them as, because I know the feeling when you look at someone and you go, nah, dude, you just haven't got your shit together. You know, like, oh, you just
yeah.
You know, like how do you, because that's a big shift to make. You know, it's like how do you reframe? Like how do you do that?
Well, the answer to that is, and I'm not sure you're going to like it, or it's going to be a very obvious, or it's a very obvious one. Because so one thing is you can look at hypnosis NLP, where you can do a reframe, you can see them in different light, you can do affirmations or whatever you want. But honestly, there's a deeper thing to it, which is how you see your partner is not your partner.
Yeah, I knew.
And many people don't get that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, and I'll give you a very clear example. Go to the restaurant, look at the menu, and try eat the steak off that menu.
Yeah.
You can't. Your thoughts about your partner is not your partner. Those are your thoughts. And so you don't even know your partner.
What do you mean about the steak? I didn't understand the analogy.
So when you go to the place, you have the menu in front of you, and I tell you, okay, eat the steak, but you haven't ordered the steak. There's no steak. There's only written steak, or there's a picture of the steak.
Okay.
That's not the steak.
No.
It's not the same thing, and it's the same thing with your partner. And so many people have not even met their partner. They're completely lost in their stories about their partner, and have the arrogance to then say, well, my partner is this or that, and get all like, worked up about it, not realizing what they're reacting to is a very elaborate story about who their partner is, what their partner is capable of, what's right and what's wrong. Because here's the thing, my way of doing things is not as organized and as clean as Natasha's. It takes less time. So there's different ways that have value and that have their place, but you can't see that if you're so stuck in reinforcing that my way is the right way and my view is reality. Your view is not reality, and it's not your partner. So you got to meet your partner.
How do you do that? How do you meet them? So like, because you guys were obviously together for a while when that was going on, right? So that means that a few years in, you may still not have met your partner.
Yep. You meet them less and less because you get more and more of a story about what they are and what they're capable of and how they are.
Because we all live in our own bubble and we're all projecting all the time and we're all deluded, basically, right? I mean,
yeah, and because we are not cultivating the discernment that we have, which we all naturally have, to see through our thoughts. So a very practical way that you can do, and everyone can go to that website. It's The Work from Byron Katie. You can put into Google.
Oh, yeah, she's great. Mm-hmm.
There is worksheets where you can write down all your judgments and you can start questioning them one by one, looking at them and seeing through them, so that you're cleaning that mirror so you can actually start meeting your partner. But it takes some work to actually step out of your mind and start to really be present with your partner. And you may think that you're present, but when you see through the judgments more and more, you realize how lost you were.
Mm. Yeah, and it's almost like a good parallel to even just our life. Society. I mean, we see that all the time. You know, you can present someone with some facts, actual evidence, and they will, because it does not align with the way they see the world or their belief system, they will counterattack and they will think you against them, or they will criticize you. They'll see you as, the worst person on earth. Like, there's nothing you can do once someone is convinced. There's nothing you can prove to them. Mm-hmm. Like you were saying, with the partner, if you think that they're useless, incapable, there's nothing that person can do until you decide to open your eyes and look at what's in front of you, right? But it's really hard. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah. Well, one way to make this easier is to learn the key skills to actually resolve conflicts in a healthy way, to actually resolve it, not just to meet halfway and do that compromising thing that the majority of people believe is like the key to a healthy relationship. We don't believe that. We're not big fans of compromising, because we know that, when you strike up a new agreement with your partner, you go away meeting halfway, but still thinking you're right? You're just giving in, and each time
I'm doing them a favor. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you're still not happy with that solution. So really how to actually address conflicts. And this is one of the reasons why it's become kind of normal to have this love-hate relationship with your partner. The reason is because you have this huge scroll of things they've done that you either think is wrong, shouldn't have been done in the first place, or that they owe you. There's a huge scroll. So what you end up seeing when you do meet your partner, you do speak to them, and when you do engage with them, is that you're engaging with everything that's almost like in the past that they owe you. And the conflicts, if they keep building up and don't get resolved, they just become that source of problem. So when you even meet them in this moment, it's not your partner in this present moment. You're looking at the story of everything that's been wrong, all their mistakes, everything that's not right. And that's really hard. And that's why I think also one of the reasons why a lot of people wait for change, wait for their partner to change, wait for their relationship to change, and rarely ever does it get better, just naturally like that, because that scroll has been built, and each day there's another thing that they did, or there they go again, or they should have said things.
It gets added to the archives.
Exactly. Yeah. And so if you don't address it, and you still don't know how to actually get along with each other, it doesn't matter if you have love. We learned very early on that love isn't enough. There are key skills you got to learn to actually
absolutely
live and be with another human being. And so unless you get those practical things sorted, it's really hard to be present with your partner in this moment, seeing them as who they really are right now.
So would you say a place to start would be, so either working with people like you, or let's say if someone can't afford to hire a coach or help at the moment, they would go to, try things with the Byron Katie, the question sheets that she has. Is that how you start to, would that be the first step to look at what's in front of you and what how you contribute to the situation.
Yeah, and the one of the most fundamental key pieces in relationship is that you're part of it. And so if you change something, the relationship changes. And you can blame it on your partner, you can project onto your partner, but ultimately, all the misery that you're feeling is your misery. And that the sooner you own that, doesn't mean that you have to, like, say you're in an abusive relationship or something like that, doesn't mean that you stay in that relationship. But still, all the feelings we're experiencing are internally created. And so our partners often give us a great gift because they bring to the surface what's happening within us, and we can look at them and we can learn to be with those emotions and those feelings and those tender spots, and they can be a catalyst for healing. And when those things heal, then the flow can flow more freely in the relationship, which is really, it becomes empowering now. But it can't happen as long as we are like, okay, my partner is this, my partner is that. It has to become to us. I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that, I feel abandoned, I feel neglected, I feel rejected, I feel not good enough. Let's start with that and let's be honest about that, and then we can do something about it. But just the acknowledgement is so important, and it's totally underrated, and most people are too busy like, okay, what's the step to fix it? Well, you haven't even acknowledged where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, I strongly believe in inner work, doing the work inside, because I think this is why I think, sometimes people, when they get into a relationship, they get, tripped up, or we get tripped up, because it's our inner stuff that comes up. It's like, I mean, for me, like, I love being single. I'm quite like now, like, we're beginning of April 2021, right? My shop is closed. I'm not even considering. I'm so good in it's easy. Single is really easy for me to do. But it's like when you get into a relationship and things comes up, then I always know this is my stuff coming up, right? It's always their stuff coming up. We all have our stuff coming up, and that's when the work comes. The work kicks in, and it can be exhausting at times. I mean, like I was hearing you mentioning about the little jabs you guys were, verbal jabs, and the passive aggressivity and all this stuff, and all the things you guys went through, and you guys, and maybe we'll do an episode on this another time. But I know, like, you guys, you've gone through, like, being long distance to open to polyamory to close to semi-open to close. I'm not getting the timeline correct here, but like, you've gone through a lot of different things over the 11 years of being together, and you've been married for 7. So you've gone through a lot of different versions of your relationship. I mean, you're probably like at version 10.0 now, because all of these different things, fast forward your growth, and it's a lot of pain. I'm sure you guys sound really zen, and there's obviously, like, I can hear there's a lot of respect for each other and love for each other. But that also took work. And I think, like you said, love is not enough. And it's like how, how did you guys, I guess my question is this, how did you guys, through all of that, how come you guys never broke up? And I'm glad you didn't, because obviously you guys sound like you're happy now, but like, were you in a good place? What was it that kept you guys together?
I'm not sure I can answer that question, to be honest. We did have 1 or 2 breaks where we were like, we're going to have some time to ourselves, but it wasn't a breakup. And I don't know what exactly it is that kept us together. It was just, for me personally, it was like clear I want to be with Natasha. And yes, there are challenges that we're going through and difficulties. But then I knew as well, I'm part of this. So just leaving doesn't necessarily mean that's going to go away.
No.
I'm just shifting circumstances. So maybe that is what kept us together. I'm not sure. What about you?
For us, or for me, I did lose hope. So I'm really glad you asked this question, because I hit my breaking point, and I couldn't see our way forward. I could see it. It was just one that made me so miserable that I didn't want to do it anymore. Like, I knew that it was so painful, so hurtful to kind of love this person, but then all our interactions were no longer based in love whatsoever. You know, it's just a lot of hurtful behaviors. And at that point, I just couldn't see the reason why we would even choose to keep doing that to each other. So it was a moment where I had to, I didn't even want to, but I kind of broke open. Like I couldn't hold that in anymore. And so one day I actually kind of just like spilled out everything that I was feeling, how hurt I was, how sad I was, how disappointed I was, how I didn't see a way forward. It was hopeless. And I just told him like I can't do this. You know, if this is how it's going to be, I just can't do this anymore. And now imagine this point in time, we've tried to work out these issues again and again. We would have the same conversations and we would walk away not getting anywhere. But this one time that I shared it in this kind of like, oops, like I just let the whole thing spill. Like I didn't mean to actually get there, go like so vulnerable and emotional and raw on Jachym. You know, I didn't want to, in a way, I didn't want him to see how badly I was hurting.
Yeah.
Like I kept it in as well as I could, but at that moment I couldn't. I literally couldn't hold it in anymore. And when that happened, I was actually a bit scared because I was like, okay, now it's really over. Because he sees how unhappy I am, and who in their right mind would stay with a woman, stay with a wife who like has that many issues. Like he's gonna bounce. Like this is done. This is not what he signed up for, you know. Because until that point, I was like a yes woman. I was a very like people pleasing. I was trying to make him happy. But then because that was disempowering too, like I was trying to control him in the household, and it's just a complete mess. And so at that point, that's what I broke open, and that's what happened. And I was really scared. I was like, okay, now he's going to leave me. And that was my biggest fear, actually, like just for us to just give up on this love and for us to separate. I was really afraid of that he would choose something else other than me, which maybe he thought would bring him more happiness. So at that point, I was like, oh, I've said it all. It's over. It's over. Like I'm meeting my biggest fear now. But then what happened was that Jachym changed. When I told him how I honestly felt for the first time, something shifted within him, and I saw something in his eyes, like recognition. Like he saw me, what I was going through. There was understanding and there was care. And for the first time ever, just, you know, trying to work things out, it felt like we were a team again, because I saw that he cared about me, and he cared about me in a way that was so simple, like a human being in pain, and I want to help them. Like there's a person who needs help, and I'm here to help them. It was so simple, but I knew that he was there for me in that way. And that because there was that recognition and that desire within him, that we were a team again. We could actually solve this together. Well, before it was really like boxing rink, me against him, against the issue. Like, okay, we've got to tackle this. Got to like, you know, it's just going at the problem again and again. But now it's like, no, it's not the boxing rink. It's like he sees me broken and he wants to help. Like he wants to repair things. So it was that moment where I finally, actually, I saw hope again. I lost all hope at that point. But when I saw him and that desire within him to make things work and for him to care and want to help, that was hope for me. That there was still something here more than love, and we maybe can get through this. And at that point, it was terrible. So we were in no shape or form to help ourselves. So we reached out to different practitioners. We worked with different people. And so that then started the healing journey.
It's hard to do it on your own, isn't it?
Not at that point. At that point.
Yeah.
And so, we needed almost to like lean on someone's strength to kind of get back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what we did. But I think for me, that experience and letting myself be that vulnerable changed everything for us, because there was a level of dishonesty from my end for not actually revealing how I was really feeling. And sometimes you want to hide the problems, you want to hide the pain, you don't want to, share all of that, because I thought, it's useless, it's my pain. But in fact, it was the very information Jachym needed to actually, okay, I can't see you like this, so let's do something about it.
Can I ask you, Jachym, what was it for you that made you, like, what was it that you were reacting to? Was it the fact that she trusted you with her, like, her true self? Because it sounds like, to me, like, when I hear Natasha, like, she just, it's almost like, that letting go of the control, like, which was almost like reflecting with the pancake making, right? It's like there's that control. So it's like, controlling our feelings as well. How much do we let someone in? How much can we trust that when we let someone, I think, because that's what you explained there, Natasha. Like, I was listening and I was just like, I was really touched by it, because it's kind of like, it's what we all want. We all want to be able to come undone, and for a partner to not run a mile, we want to come undone, and for a partner to be there. And they may not know the answer. We don't need them to have the answer, but we want them to see that we're a team. When you said that team thing, that's something that I know for me, I want a team partner, and it's that, but to come undone in that way, obviously you guys were already together for a while, so but it's like, what, so I guess I'm asking you, like, from a woman, like, as a woman, I'm asking, like, Jachym, like, what was it that for you, how did you receive that when she did that, when she explained to you how she was feeling?
Well, for me, there was just empathy and compassion that came out. There was nothing planned in this conversation, but for the first time, I actually truly saw what was going on for Natasha. While before, that just didn't hit home.
Why did it not hit home before? Do you know?
Well, I can only speculate in terms of, like, when Natasha says, she really cracked open and she showed herself. For me, all the other conversations didn't have that total honesty and openness and vulnerability.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that, like, yes, she was communicating some of it, but it came from a guarded place. It came from a fearful place, from a place of trying to manage things, from a place of trying to communicate the right thing or whatever. And this was unfiltered and raw and real. There was nothing planned about it. It was just her and showing her pain. And it's like, I don't know, you see an animal on the road suffering, your heart reaches out. Of course, when you see another human being suffering, your heart reaches out, unless you're a psychopath. And I'm not a psychopath, so my heart was deeply touched, and I was like, well, we got to do something about this. We turned around.
You said something really key, was that, before she was, she did what actually most of us do, which is, we trying to convey something to our partner, we're trying to explain something, or we may be trying to fix an argument, or we're nagging, or we control, whatever it is, that we all do, right? We all have, human behaviors is international. But I guess because we're being told so much that we can't just show everything, well, I guess I don't know how to explain this, but I guess, like, we have to be guarded, we have to protect ourselves, and there are good reasons for it as well at times, right? But I guess what you probably sensed that this was like unfiltered, you mentioned the word unfiltered and raw, and I think that is something that, that I think between, human beings, I mean, I don't know if you ever experience, I guess the only way I kind of think that I understand this is, like, with an example that's not to do with romantic relationships. But when you have people who are, sometimes you can engage with someone because you can tell there's something missing in the information, there's something missing. they're not being completely themselves. And that's why you can't engage as much or care as much. But the minute they're actually being really honest or truthful, the only thing you can be is engaging and responsive, right? So, you know, relationships, there are so many different dynamics. And I think it is hard to, you know, because when you're a partner, you're trying to, you want them to still see you. You want them to always respect you and admire you a little bit. You still want them to find you sexy, or you want to find them sexy, you know, all that kind of stuff. So we feel like we have to be so contrived at times. Like, how much can we say? How much can we let go? How much can we, you know, there's always this unconscious maybe measuring up in our mind of, oh, you know, how much can we say, you know, or is this going to hurt them too much if I really say how I'm feeling? You know, like Natasha really saying how much she was hurting is also a sign of she has to trust that you're going to know that, you know, how to receive it. You know, that's not, you know, so I'm not expressing myself too well here, but.
No, I think you're onto something. And this is part of what we help with, you know, when women come to us, is exactly that. You need to unguard your heart. You can do all the communication you want, but there's two things that need to be in place for the communication to actually work. One is the honesty within yourself. If you're not honest to yourself, what you're going to communicate is lies, not because you want to lie to your partner, but because you're not honest to yourself. And the second thing that needs to be in place, especially in conversations like this, is this honesty and vulnerability and that rawness, because sometimes you need to put everything on the line in order for things to change.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, you're holding back, and you're holding back from fear. You're holding back from, well, I'm just not going to go quite there because what if? It's just the mind coming in. Look, you have one life and you don't know how long you're going to live. Next day, you may not wake up.
Yeah.
So why don't you relate from a place of authenticity and being real in this moment with the person, you know?
I love that you said that, being honest with ourselves, because I think that probably is that thing, you know, like even when I was saying the example, you know, where some people in our lives, whether it's, you know, work related or however, it's hard, you don't feel really engaged in them because you feel some things missing. And I think it is that lack of, we're not resonating because we can feel they can't really be 100% truthful because they're not honest with themselves. Like, we're not always on it. Like, being honest with ourselves is not easy. Like, you know, because it's a wake up call, right? It's like, it can be a very sour pill to swallow. You know, it's a scary thing being honest with ourselves sometimes, you know? So I think, it's not because that person is trying to be dishonest with you. It's because they're not honest with themselves and they're not aware of it. Because, you know, every day, you know, work, you know, home, sleep, work, home, sleep, work, home, you know, just that routine.
Yeah, not just that. It's also that there's just certain spots in ourselves that we are really, really scared of, and that we don't want to see, we don't want to go to. There's lots of judgment. There's lots of pain that's associated with it. The mind is making it into something huge. And the truth is that when you do go there, it's liberating, and it gets you back into your integrity and your wholeness, rather than being split off from yourself. And so it is really worthwhile, but you are not being honest because of that, you know, and some of those mechanisms, they're fairly unconscious. You're not aware of them. At least I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to do the work ourselves with ourselves so that we can actually engage from an authentic place with people around us.
And I think for the longest time, I didn't value my own experience. So like, if something bothered me within the relationship, I thought, oh, no big deal. Or who am I to ask for him to change? Or, you know, what's the point? It's my issue. And I did that for like the first half of our relationship. Probably the reason why like all that resentment and all the whole power struggle even started is because I just kept shoving it down. But at the time, it's like, oh, I don't want to be an inconvenience. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to cause trouble. Like, I don't want to be the source of conflict or whatever. I thought I was doing us a favor by not bringing up these little petty stuff that didn't feel so good for a moment. But what I realized later on is that I was robbing Jachym of such crucial information regarding our relationship and how we were engaging with one another that could have like helped us to navigate. Like it's like how can you like, is it fly a plane without knowing like the degree that you're like, if you don't know you're off course, how can you correct to get back on course? So by withholding pretty much one half of what I was feeling, which was actually extremely valid, I was getting the, red alarm bells and signs, but I just didn't speak it. And he never got that valuable information. And by the time it did, that's when it blows up in your partner's face, right? And they're like, whoa, is that how you feel? And people feel blindsided and the problem seems like overwhelming. Like, where did that come from? But if we learn to actually acknowledge that it's real, that it's valid, that what you're going through is valuable. It's, you're worth it. You got to listen to that. And not only do you have to listen to that, you can voice that, then your relationship really has a chance to kind of get back on course, because now you're actually engaged within the relationship. So actually, for some weird way, like I was there, but Jachym didn't really have me as a partner for many years. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think a lot of us can relate to what you just said, to be quite honest. I think it's it's easier said than done, oh, we have to, do XYZ, but I think we can definitely understand, I think we're not doing anyone any favor by playing small, basically, right? It's okay to take space. It's okay to say, no, actually, this is what's going on for me in this relationship. When you say this, well, I don't know how you'd say actually. What do you have an example to round up? Like, do you have an example of it? Like you said, like, the small things that we just swallow because we don't feel like it's big enough to mention, but actually those have a compounding effect because, something is being held back, something is not being resolved. Like how would you, if you were to do that again, like, or now, how would you explain something small that may seem no big deal, but effectively you need to express it? How would you say it now?
So Natasha isn't the only one who was holding back. I was holding back too. So I'll give you a very specific example. Yeah. One thing that was rampant in our relationship was blame. And for me, it was difficult to admit how much that hurt me. For me, I was unfazed, by everything. So me admitting that I'm getting hurt by those comments, or that I'm getting blamed for a toast that's been burned that I didn't put up, nor did I know there was a toast there in the first place, was not something that I enjoyed in the relationship. And so it would literally mean that at that point where we made clear we don't want to have those kind of patterns anymore in our relationship, that I would sit her down and be like, look, I really feel blamed by what you're saying right now. And we would look at it, because there's always the chance that I am overreacting or that I'm not seeing something quite right. And so we would have an honest conversation about what has happened, and whether my feeling of being blamed was really that was going on, or whether she actually didn't do that at all. Now it did actually. It was most of the time was the case that it was there. Natasha was a master at subliminal communication. A breath here and there could send me spinning while I'm sitting in the other room. So it was well placed. The way she was going about it was a bit more covert, which was much more difficult for me to then point out.
Yeah, but we all understand. Like, I think we've all done it. We've all been on the receiving end. It's like we all know what you. Yeah,
it's like it flies under the radar, right?
Yeah.
And so, but that would be something we would sit down and we talk about it. And I'll be like, look, this is what I feel. And those conversations weren't easy. They weren't easy for me. They weren't easy for Natasha. But they were so worth it, because without them, we wouldn't be where we are now.
Yeah. No, I mean, but yeah, I guess like I can imagine that they're not easy, because I could almost feel like the reaction of someone would be, no, that's not what I was doing. I didn't do that breath to make you feel like, like I was blaming you or that you were incapable. Like, it's easier to deny, right? When than being confronted with the reality of things, and just to admit, yeah, do you know what? I'm sorry, I was being a bit of a, I was being difficult, or I was doing this, or I was, it's not easy,
It isn't, and there's a place. So if you're not in that space where you do have that mutual trust and both are open to actually look, at the beginning, I do believe there was a time where I'm like, look, this is where you're blaming me. Like, I would just say it.
Yeah.
And then later on, it would kind of become more open and be like, okay, let's look at it together. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's uncomfortable because it goes against my self-image. For Natasha, it's uncomfortable. She can get defensive, obviously, like who wouldn't? And so there's both parties who are in it that are not comfortable with it. But at the same time, if you don't address it, well, it's just going to rule the relationship. You're going to be ruled by those unconscious patterns, and it's going to get you somewhere you don't want to go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because if it's not cleared up, then it does have a compounding effect. It really does. Well, I just want to say like a big, big thank you to you both, Natasha and Hakeem, for being just so really like just honest about, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how you got to much better and a good place. I love how I can hear like you both are taking stability, with whatever happened. And I did like that Hakeem, like, jumped in a couple of times saying, by the way, I know, like, it was also me, like you kind of like, not just Natasha. I like that. I think that's a great quality in any human being, to, you have to be a team. I mean, I believe that so strongly. So I would love for you to tell us how people can work with you and how they can find you. But just really, really quickly, I just want to ask the finishing thoughts. I ask all my guests this, and there's 2 questions. And the first one is, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
Oh, she's definitely an 18-year-old at 18-year-old. For me, it's really that you can stop putting yourself down, because I was such a people pleaser. And I just, like, you asked me a question, hey, where do you want to go for lunch? I'd say, where do you want to go? I was the most pleasant friend you could ever have, because I wouldn't cause any trouble. I would always be agreeable. But no, that's really not the way to live. And it really doesn't look like it. It's very slippery slope. It gets you hurt. You hurt yourself. And you end up in like very dangerous places, like compromised positions that you'll find yourself in if you don't actually acknowledge, value, respect, and stand up for yourself. So I tell her, hey, 18, never too late. Time to get started on that.
Yeah.
For me, I would tell my 18-year-old self to stop listening to the crazy mind I have.
or like, what do you mean, like all your crazy thoughts like that we all have?
Yeah, I was quite depressed in my teenage years. I was unhappy with everything, and I was totally lost in my own story about society, myself, and life. And I was thinking that was reality.
Yeah. And the second one is, what stuff do you not put up with anymore?
I don't put up with anymore with any of those negative patterns that we have in our relationship. I'm committed to love, empowerment, respect, and being with each other in the best way we can.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And Natasha?
I agree with you in terms of our relationship. Like, we took a very strong stance as to like we're not doing that again. So I agree with all those things. But for me in my life, it's something I've been working on for the past several years, really, is this like overworking, overachieving, trying to do it all kind of person within me. So I'm learning to like let it go. Like, why do I have to get things done in a most efficient, timely, organized manner? Like, no. So I'm ready to let that go. I don't want to put up with that part of me that just, it's like a bowl. or like a what do you call it? Like the Capricorn is a mountain goat. It's just like going up the hill.
Yeah.
Like, stop. Well, why are you doing that? Like, just do what you want. Don't push yourself like that. And life still goes on.
Yes. Oh, I love this. Thank you so much, both of you. Can you please tell us all, where can people find you? How can they work with you? Do you work online as well? Give us all the good stuff.
Yep. We definitely work online. We have our coaching programs. We have lots of goodies on our website. So I'll share a few things. One, since we're talking here on a podcast, we have our own podcast. It's called Awakened Wife. So you can find it and subscribe at awakenedwife.com. Now, for today, we talked a lot about these like toxic communication patterns. And I know, like, when that scroll is you're writing down that like accounting for your relationship, that scroll is getting longer and longer, and then it bleeds into your relationship. So if you want to check in as to whether you're making some very common communication mistakes that actually kind of drive you and your partner further away from one another and disconnects you from one another, then there's a fun little quiz you can take. You can find that at yourexceptionalrelationship.com/understand and troubleshoot. Like, you'll get some results and see, okay, how is your communication? What's going on? Could it improve, or is it in a good place? So that's all there. And if you want to work with us, just head to our website and find out more about us.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, both of you. I do hope to have you back on for another episode at some point, because I think there's so much more I want to dive into with you two. Like, you've got so much to offer. And thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
And that's our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to rate, review, share it, subscribe it on iTunes, follow it on Spotify, or whichever platform you listen from. However you show love is how you can support this show. Drop me your questions or suggestions for future episodes via the website at angie-s.com, or come and find me on Instagram at @toolforthishitpodcast. See you next week, and until then,
Using health inappropriately.